What if the most powerful force in Tamriel wasn't a spell, a shout, or the whisper of a Daedric prince? What if it was nothing? Complete and utter silence. An emptiness that could swallow magic whole, erasing enchantments, stilling the flow of magicka, and leaving even the most powerful archmage as helpless as a commoner. For centuries, a whisper has persisted in the darkest corners of forgotten libraries, a myth of a place so profound, so terrifyingly mundane, that it defies the very laws of creation. They called it Vun-Nul, the lost city, a place where gods hold no sway, where prophecies die on the wind, and where mortality is the only truth. But what happens when this myth proves real? When a desperate scholar, a cynical mercenary, and a mage, cursed with fading power, venture into the mountains in search of it? They are hunted by zealots, who believe such a place is the ultimate blasphemy, a threat to the natural order that must be annihilated. But the city's true purpose is a secret far more dangerous than its power. It is a choice, an answer to a question no one has dared to ask. What is the true cost of magic? And is a world without it a prison or a paradise? Stay with us as we journey into the heart of silence itself. And if you value the tales of this world, be sure to subscribe and strike the like button. For this is a story that will challenge everything you know about power in the world of the Elder Scrolls. The scent of aging parchment and dried ink was Elara's sanctuary. Within the hallowed halls of the College of Whispers, she was not just a scholar, but an archaeologist of forgotten ideas. It was there, in a mislabeled folio of Psijic essays, that she found the first mention, Vun-Nul, the silent city, a theoretical construct, the essay argued, where the flow of magicka was not merely absent, but actively, perfectly and permanently negated. A cosmic sinkhole, a blasphemy, according to its Altmer author. But to Elara, it was a revelation. For weeks, she cross-referenced star charts, geological surveys, and fragmented Reachman oral histories. A pattern emerged, pointing to a desolate, storm-racked region of the Druidak Mountains, a place where even the hardy mountain clans refused to settle. The night she translated the final passage of the Tome of Silence, a heretical text penned by a breakaway sect of Psijics called the Silent Schism, her sanctuary was violated. Shadows clad in golden armor and midnight robes moved through the library's corridors, their steps muffled, but their intent radiating like a killing frost. The Thalmor. She watched from a high alcove as they turned her research to ash, their leader's voice a venomous hiss. The mundane heresy will be purged from memory. Clutching the one transcribed map, Elara fled into the night, the weight of a world-altering secret, her only companion. She needed a guide, a sword, someone for whom gold spoke louder than politics. She found him in a raucous tavern near the high rock border, a Redguard whose eyes held the weary cynicism of 100 pointless battles. Kalen was sharpening a long, unadorned sword, ignoring the magical light shows of a performing bard. "Magic is a liar's tool," he grunted, after she made her desperate plea, his voice like grinding stones. "It dazzles you before it burns you. A city without it? That sounds like the most honest place in Tamriel. My steel is yours and for a price." Their unlikely partnership was soon complicated. As they prepared their expedition, a figure approached their table, his elegant Altmer robes frayed, his movements unsteady. He was pale, his golden skin tinged with gray, and a tremor ran through his hands. You speak of a place where magic dies," he rasped, his voice thin and desperate. "I am Fëanor, and I am unwell." He held up a hand, and a pathetic flicker of mage light sputtered and died, leaving behind the smell of ozone and failure. "My connection to Etherius, it frays. Some days I am a conduit, others I am this, an empty vessel. If this Vun-Nul is real, perhaps it holds a cure, or at least an answer." Elara saw the desperation in his eyes, the terror of a master craftsman losing his tools. Kalen saw a liability. But Fëanor's knowledge of magical theory, even in his afflicted state, was unparalleled. Reluctantly they became three, a trinity of purpose bound for the silent heart of the mountains. Behind them, unknowingly, Another party moved with cold, fanatical purpose. Justicia Vanir of the Purifiers, a splinter sect of the Thalmor, had found Elara's trail. He would not allow this blasphemy against mer superiority to be rediscovered. He would see it annihilated. The journey into the Druidak Mountains was a descent into a creeping mundanity. At first it was subtle. The air grew still, the faint, almost imperceptible hum of ambient magicka that suffused all of Tamriel thinned, then vanished. Elara's ever-glowing satchel light flickered and died. Kaelin's sword, bearing a minor enchantment of sharpness, felt like simple, heavy steel in his hand. For the Redguard, it was a relief. Good, he'd mutter, testing its edge against his thumb. An honest weight, an honest edge. For Fëanor, it was torture. Every step deeper into the mountains was a nail in his coffin. His spells, already unreliable, became impossible dreams. A simple healing glamour he attempted on a cut on Elara's arm dissolved into nothing, leaving him panting and shivering. He was becoming just a man, a frail, terrified man, stripped of his birthright. "It feels like I'm going deaf," he whispered one night by their mundane campfire, its flames casting stark, unmagical shadows. The world, it has stopped singing. They encountered the Reachman clans clinging to the foothills, their shamans wild-eyed and desperate. Their spirit wards had crumbled generations ago. Their scrying rituals showed them nothing. They spoke of the Great Silence, a creeping void that had swallowed their traditions and left them at the mercy of the elements. They were the first victims of Vun-Nul, a people whose culture had been slowly erased by its proximity. Justicia Vanir's pursuit was relentless. His own mages found their scrying spells useless, their elemental tracking dissolving. Enraged, Vanir adapted, falling back on the brute force methods of lesser races, tracking, woodcraft, and interrogation. He was a force of pure will, and the silence only hardened his resolve. This affront to creation must be unmade. After weeks of travel they found it. Not a grand shimmering portal, but an archway of interlocking obsidian-like stone, so perfectly carved that no mortar was visible. It seemed to absorb sound and light. Standing before it, the contrast was absolute. One side was Tamriel, a world of potential, of whispers from Etherius. The other was nothing. Stepping through was like being plunged into a soundless, scentless void. The air was clean but sterile. The silence was not an absence of noise, but a presence, a heavy, oppressive blanket. Vun-Nul was a masterpiece of impossible engineering. Great towers spiraled into the sky, built not with levitation spells, but with a breathtaking understanding of counterweights and physics. Intricate aqueducts powered by gravity alone carried water through silent courtyards. Light was channeled through vast crystal lenses and polished stone, illuminating halls with a cold, analytical glow. There were no enchanted lights, no magical constructs, only the genius of the mortal mind and hand. It was beautiful, but it was the beauty of a perfect machine, a city without a soul. Their progress was slow. The city was protected not by magical wards, but by intricate mechanical traps. A corridor of pressure plates that had to be crossed in a precise sequence. A chamber where the exit was opened by replicating a complex series of tones on resonant stone chimes. A chasm crossed by a bridge that would only extend if counterweights were precisely balanced. Here, Kaelin's strength and Elara's scholarly mind were paramount. Fëanor, now utterly bereft of power, could only offer his theoretical knowledge. Her fire rune would disarm that entire sequence, he'd say with a hollow voice, watching Kaelin painstakingly disable each trigger by hand. He was a ghost in this city of the mundane, his former identity erased. They finally reached the city's heart, a cavernous geodesic dome. At its center, suspended by an intricate web of sculpted arms, was the Null Core. It was a colossal geode of perfectly black, non-reflective crystal, a hole in reality that seemed to drink the very light from the air. It emitted a low subsonic hum, the only sound in the entire city, and before it stood a shimmering, translucent figure. "It is not a ghost," Elara breathed, her academic curiosity overriding her fear. There is no necromantic energy. The figure, an ancient Altmer in the robes of a Sigic monk, shimmered like a heat haze. "I am the final echo," the projection spoke, its voice a synthesized tone, calm and dispassionate. A memory imprinted upon this chamber's resonant structure, the last of the silent schism. It explained everything. The founders were not monsters or madmen. They were Sigics who had gazed upon the tapestry of fate and seen the threads of magic not as a gift, but as a chain. Aedra, Daedra, prophecies, the towers, all were instruments of control, cosmic forces that rendered mortal choice an illusion. "We did not seek to build a weapon," the echo stated, "but a sanctuary, a refuge from magic, a place where a mortal life could be lived on mortal terms, from its first breath to its last, free from the tyranny of gods and destiny. We created potential." Fëanor sank to his knees. The hope he had so desperately clung to, of a cure, of a way to restore himself, crumbled into dust. This city was not an answer to his affliction. It was the affliction, made manifest and deliberate. This was his future, an eternity of silence. The echo's final words were drowned out by the grating sound of the chamber doors being forced open. Justiciar Vanya stood there, flanked by his golden-armored purifiers. His face, a mask of aristocratic fury, twisted in horror as he beheld the Null core. "Blasphemy!" he shrieked, his voice unnaturally loud in the silent chamber. "An affront to the very divinity of the Altmeri race. You will not be allowed to poison the world with this mundanity." With no magic to command, the confrontation was immediate and brutal. It was a battle of pure physicality. Cailan was a whirlwind of steel, his Redguard fury unleashed in a place that made him feel whole. His unadorned sword crashed against Thalmor armor with percussive, honest clangs. Elara, using her knowledge gleaned from the tome, activated a series of the chamber's mechanical defenses, causing stone pillars to shift and create barriers. Even Fëanor, armed with only a broken staff and a well of despair, fought with a savage, desperate strength he never knew he possessed. He was no longer a failed mage. He was simply a man fighting for his life. Vanya, a master of destructive magic, was now just an Altmer with a dagger. But his fanaticism was his true weapon. He broke through their lines, ignoring the warriors to make for the Null core. In his hand he held not a spell, but a huge, rune-etched sledgehammer. "If the world's magic is to be unmade," he roared, "it will be in a blaze of glory that scours this heresy from existence." He intended to shatter the core, to release the countless millennia of absorbed magicka in a cataclysm that would vaporize the entire mountain range. As Cailan desperately tried to intercept him, Elara saw the control console near the core, its schematics suddenly making a terrifying sense. They had a choice: overload the core, and it would expand its field, silencing a continent, but destroying itself. Or retune it, using Vanya's blow as the final catalyst, and seal Vun-Nul away from the world forever. "Fëanor, stop him!" she screamed, racing to the console. Fëanor saw Vanya raise the hammer. He saw Cailan, too far away to intervene. And in that moment he saw his purpose. He was no longer a mage, he was not a failure. He was a shield. With a final, desperate cry, he threw himself in front of Vanya. The rune hammer, intended for the black crystal of the core, came down on him instead. The sound was sickeningly mundane, and it was the last sound he ever made. That sacrifice bought Elara the seconds she needed. As Vanya stared in shock at the broken body at his feet, Elara slammed her hand on the final rune of the console. The echo of the Guardian dissolved. The entire city groaned, the sound of 1,000 colossal locks turning at once. Cailan grabbed Elara, pulling her away, as the entrance to the dome began to grind shut, entombing the screaming Justiciar and his remaining purifiers in the silent heart of the mountain. They fled through the shuddering city, the very foundations of Vun-Nul shifting around them. The path they had taken was now collapsing, the genius of its architects being turned inward to create an impenetrable tomb. They burst through the entrance archway back into the Druidak Mountains, just as a final grinding thud echoed from deep within the rock, followed by an unbreakable eternal silence. The entrance was gone, replaced by a seamless cliff face. Vun-Nul had vanished. The sensation of returning to Tamriel proper was a physical shock. The air hummed with a life they had forgotten, a vibrant, chaotic energy that felt almost intoxicatingly loud after the pure silence. Elara felt the faint warmth of the minor enchantment on her robes reactivate. Kalen felt the thrum of his enchanted sword return, and for the first time it felt alien, a borrowed and dishonest power. They stood there for a long time, two survivors of a forgotten philosophy, a secret that could shatter the foundations of their world locked away behind stone and their own haunted memories. They buried Fëanor on a ridge overlooking the now mundane mountain, marking his grave with his broken, powerless staff. He had sought a cure for his fading magic, but had instead found his ultimate purpose in its complete absence, a final, meaningful act of mundane bravery. He had not died a failed mage, but a hero. Elara and Kalen parted ways at the foothills. No grand promises were made, only a shared look of understanding. He was a sellsword who had found a truth more profound than any treasure, and she was a scholar who had discovered a piece of knowledge too dangerous for the world to know. They walked back into a world governed by gods, prophecies, and the chaotic whims of magic, forever changed by the memory of the city where mortals, for a brief and shining moment, had been truly free. The silence was gone, but its echo would haunt them for the rest of their days.